She wasn't supposed to do it, but when she looked into those tiny eyes, she knew she had no choice. This is the story of Maria Adelino, a nurse who risked everything for one small life. Maria Adelino had been a neonatal nurse for 12 years at São Paulo General Hospital. 12 years of saving lives, of holding tiny hands, of being the last voice some babies ever heard. But nothing had prepared her for baby Lucas. Lucas was born at 26 weeks. His parents were 16-year-old students who disappeared the moment they heard the news. No family support, no resources, just a tiny body fighting for survival in an overcrowded hospital. São Paulo General was drowning. Budget cuts meant fewer nurses, older equipment, longer shifts. In the neonatal unit, one nurse for every 8 babies. Maria watched as warning alarms were ignored, as feeding schedules were delayed, as the most vulnerable were left to fend for themselves. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday when Lucas's oxygen saturation dropped to 78%. The attending physician was in emergency surgery. The on-call doctor was 30 minutes away. Maria watched the numbers falling, 75, 72, 68. She knew what would happen if she waited. In that moment, Maria faced an impossible choice: follow protocol and watch a baby die, or break every rule she'd sworn to uphold. She thought about her own mother, dying alone because there was no one to care. She thought about all the lives she couldn't save, and she made her decision. At 3:47 a.m., Maria Adelino walked out of São Paulo General Hospital carrying baby Lucas. No permission, no backup, just a nurse and a dying baby. She had spent her entire savings on portable monitors, oxygen tanks, and IV supplies. Her bedroom became a NICU. For 47 days, Maria lived 2 lives. By day, she was the dedicated nurse at the hospital. By night, she was Lucas's only hope. She monitored his vitals every hour, administered medications with surgical precision, and fought off infections with supplies she bought with her own money. She lied to her colleagues, avoided her friends, and lived in constant fear. Lucas began to improve. His weight increased from 800 grams to 1.2 kilograms. His breathing stabilized. For the first time in weeks, Maria slept through the night. But hospitals audit patient records, and Lucas had disappeared from the system. It started with a simple question during morning rounds: "Where's baby Lucas?" The head nurse checked the records. The bed was empty. The monitors were silent. An audit was initiated. At 9:15 a.m. on a Monday, Maria was arrested in the hospital parking lot. The charges were kidnapping, theft of medical equipment, and violation of patient rights. The media called her a baby thief. Her license was suspended. Her colleagues crossed the street to avoid her. Her own family stopped taking her calls. Maria lost everything: her job, her reputation, her sense of belonging. She was ostracized by the medical community, judged by strangers on the internet, and abandoned by everyone she thought cared. But Lucas survived. After 47 days of intensive care at home, he was ready for the world. And when his biological parents finally visited him in the orphanage, they saw the truth. Maria had given their son a future. They hired a lawyer, started a petition, and demanded justice. Not for Maria's crime, but for her compassion. The story that had destroyed her began to save her. Public opinion shifted. Former patients spoke out. Medical associations intervened. Social media campaigns went viral. People began to understand. The legal battle lasted 2 years. Expert witnesses testified about the hospital's negligence. Ethics committees reviewed the case, and the judge heard testimonies from both sides. The verdict was unprecedented. Maria was found guilty of procedural violations, but the charges were reduced to a suspended sentence. Her nursing license would be restored after community service. Justice had been served with mercy. After 2 years of legal battles, Maria's license was restored. She returned to nursing, different but not broken. She had learned that sometimes the system fails, but compassion never does. Maria didn't return to the same hospital. Instead, she joined a children's hospital with better resources. But she also started training other nurses in ethical decision-making, teaching them when to follow rules and when to break them.
Today, Lucas is a healthy 5-year-old boy. He attends regular school, plays soccer, and dreams of being a doctor. His biological parents visit regularly, and every year they visit Maria together. What started as a crisis became a family. Lucas calls Maria Aunt Maria. His parents call her the woman who gave our son his life, and Maria calls them the family that taught me about forgiveness. Maria's story inspired hospital reforms, better staffing ratios, improved equipment, and emergency protocols. She became an advocate for healthcare workers, speaking about the impossible choices they face daily. Maria learned that heroism isn't always recognized, that doing the right thing sometimes means breaking the rules, and that compassion is stronger than bureaucracy. But she also learned that truth eventually prevails. The hospital that had condemned her eventually apologized. Her former colleagues became her biggest supporters, and the community that had shunned her embraced her. Forgiveness, she discovered, was healing. Maria's story proves that one person's compassion can change everything. One decision can save a life. One act of defiance can inspire reform. And one story can remind us of our humanity. Sometimes the greatest act of love is also the greatest act of rebellion. Sometimes doing your job means refusing to do your job. And sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what really matters. Would you risk everything to save one life? Would you break the rules to follow your conscience? Would you face condemnation to do what is right? In a world of protocols and procedures, Maria reminded us that healthcare is about hearts, not charts. That saving lives sometimes means saving souls, and that heroes come in scrubs, not capes. The truth about Maria's story is that it could happen to any of us. Any healthcare worker who's ever had to choose between following orders and saving a life. Any person who's ever had to decide between safety and compassion. But Maria's story is also a story of hope. Hope that systems can change. Hope that compassion will prevail. And hope that one person really can make a difference. Lucas grew up knowing his story, knowing that someone risked everything for him. And he grew up wanting to do the same for others. The cycle of compassion continued. Maria mentored a new generation of nurses, teaching them that caring is more than a job. It's a calling, a responsibility, and sometimes a sacrifice. Hospitals across the country changed their policies because of one nurse's impossible choice. Legislation was passed to protect whistleblowers, and emergency protocols were established. One story created systemic change. Maria received awards she never sought, recognition she never expected. But the greatest award was knowing Lucas was alive, and that her actions had inspired others. Maria never saw herself as a hero, just a nurse who couldn't watch a baby die. She reminded us that heroes are often ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. Maria's story didn't end with her vindication. It continues every day in the lives she touches, every nurse she mentors, every life she saves, every system she improves. Her story transcends language, culture, and borders because compassion is universal, because the choice between rules and humanity is one we all face. What would you do in Maria's place? When the system fails, do you follow it anyway, or do you trust your conscience? When no one is watching, do you still do what is right? Maria's story challenges us all to be more than our job titles, more than our social roles, to remember that sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. Sometimes the greatest act of love is also the greatest act of crime. But in Maria Adelino's case, what the world called a crime, heaven called a miracle. Her story reminds us that sometimes the greatest acts of love require the greatest courage. Would you risk everything to save one life? Subscribe to this channel and press the like button, please. Thank you.